Before you buy a lottery ticket, pause for a moment, because what you are about to speak has the power to shift the atmosphere around your life. Many people chase luck, but they forget that true blessing is never accidental. It is spoken, declared, and believed. In the Bible, breakthrough often began with a single sentence of faith. These 4 words are not magic, they are a spiritual alignment, a declaration that invites God into what you are hoping for. When you speak them with conviction, you're not gambling, you're positioning yourself under divine favor. Your next moment could be the beginning of a turnaround you never expected. Before we talk about anything else, we must understand that faith is not a decoration added to life. It is the foundation upon which every expectation is built. When a person buys a lottery ticket or makes any decision based on desire, they often do it passively, hoping something good might happen, but not truly engaging their spirit in what they seek. And this is where most people miss the deeper truth. Faith isn't passive. Faith is an active, living force. It shapes intention, it defines direction, and it invites the supernatural into the natural world. When I say faith is foundational, I am not speaking in metaphor, I am speaking in spiritual fact. You must realize that before any blessing manifests physically, it must first be conceived spiritually. What you expect determines what you attract. What you believe determines what you prepare for. People often say they are unlucky, but the truth is, luck is merely the expression of expectation without structure. Faith, however, is expectation with alignment. Alignment to God's purpose, God's timing, and God's character. When you act from that space, even something as simple as picking up a ticket becomes a moment of spiritual positioning. Think of the countless times in Scripture when Jesus asked a simple question, "Do you believe?" He did not ask, "Do you hope?" He did not ask, "Are you desperate?" He did not ask, "Do you wish something could happen?" He asked about belief, because belief shapes reality. Belief opens the human heart to divine intervention. Belief transforms an ordinary moment into a doorway for something extraordinary. And this is the part many overlook. The miracle rarely begins with action. It begins with attitude. It begins with the inner posture of the heart. Before the healing, before the breakthrough, before the provision, God looks at the heart's expectation. Faith is not emotion. Emotion fluctuates, but faith anchors. Emotion reacts, but faith responds. Emotion observes the situation, but faith observes the promise. When a person lives with faith at the center, they do not act out of fear or desperation. They act out of conviction. They make decisions with clarity because the inner world is already aligned. When you speak those 4 words before buying a ticket, it is not about the ticket at all. It is about the state of your spirit. It is about grounding your desire in God's ability, not your own chance. It is about declaring, "I am not moving randomly. I am moving with divine consciousness." Now, understand this carefully. Faith does not guarantee a specific outcome. It guarantees a strengthened relationship with the one who holds every outcome. And in that relationship, your expectations change. You stop chasing temporary wins. You start seeking divine will. You begin to operate from a higher perspective. That is why faith is foundational. Without faith, your actions are scattered. With faith, your actions become purposeful. Without faith, you are guided by impulse. With faith, you are guided by insight. Without faith, you live in reaction. With faith, you live in revelation. And here's something else. Faith creates internal order. The human mind cannot hold confidence and confusion at the same time. One must dominate. When faith is present, confusion weakens. Doubt loses its authority. Anxiety dissolves. Faith organizes your thoughts into a coherent narrative that says, something good is possible, something good is available, something good is already in motion. That inner order produces a psychological resilience and a spiritual clarity that people often mistake for luck. But it's not luck, it's alignment. When you internalize this truth, you stop asking, will this work? And you begin declaring, God is guiding my steps. And when God guides, even small steps carry great significance. Even ordinary decisions become spiritually charged. Even moments that seem insignificant can become seeds of transformation. That is the power of foundational faith. So before you reach for anything in life, an opportunity, a goal, a ticket, a dream, pause and anchor your heart in faith. Because faith is the unseen architecture of every blessing that becomes visible. And when faith becomes your foundation, Your entire life begins to shift toward what God has already prepared for you. Build your life on faith and watch how everything else begins to rise. When we talk about words creating the environment of your future, we are not speaking poetically. We are speaking spiritually, psychologically, and even neurologically. Human beings live inside the atmosphere of their own speech. What you say consistently becomes the mental climate you breathe in every day. And this is something I emphasized often. Long before your life changes externally, it must change linguistically. The words you release shape your inner world, and your inner world eventually shapes your outer experience. Nothing in your life evolves until your vocabulary evolves. People often underestimate the profound influence of their confession. They speak carelessly, not realizing that every word is a seed, and seeds do not decide whether to grow. They grow because growth is their nature. The real question is, what kind of seeds are you planting? Words of doubt plant fear. Words of worry plant hesitation. Words of defeat plant limitation. But words of faith plant possibility. Words of intention plant direction. Words of spiritual confidence plant resilience. When you declare something with conviction, your mind begins preparing for it, your emotions begin aligning with it, and your actions begin moving toward it. This is the quiet, consistent power of verbal creation. Think of how God created the world. He did not think the universe into existence, He spoke it. There is a divine principle embedded in creation. What is spoken becomes structure. What is declared becomes destiny. And because we are created in His image, our words carry a smaller but similar creative power. They build atmosphere. They build expectation. They build internal momentum. When I say words create your future, I am pointing to this divine pattern woven into the human spirit. This is why the 4 words you speak before buying a lottery ticket or before making any decision are not about the outcome. They are about the environment they create within you. Those words lift your spirit from randomness into intention. They shift your mindset from passivity to participation. They awaken the part of you that is connected to divine purpose. And once your inner atmosphere changes, your outer behavior naturally follows. You must realize that the subconscious mind absorbs repetition. Whatever you say repeatedly, it begins to treat as truth. That truth then becomes the unconscious reference point for your decisions. So when a person repeatedly says, "Nothing ever works for me," they are not just expressing frustration. They are programming their future. When they say, "I never have good luck," they are building a psychological prison they will later mistake for fate. But when a person begins to speak words of alignment, words of faith, gratitude, and expectation, they are not merely being positive. They are rewriting their internal map of possibility. This is why some people succeed even in unfavorable environments, while others struggle in ideal conditions. The difference is not the environment around them, it is the environment within them. A person with a defeated vocabulary cannot build a victorious life. A person who constantly criticizes their own future cannot walk into a blessed one. But someone who guards their speech, shapes their confession, and aligns their words with divine promise begins to see opportunities where others see obstacles. And this is where your words become spiritual technology. They are tools. They are instruments of alignment. When spoken with sincerity and faith, they create clarity. When spoken with authority, they create confidence. And when spoken consistently, they create transformation. Your future grows in the direction of your most dominant confession. So when you speak those 4 words before taking any step, not just a lottery ticket, but any step of desire, you are not manipulating luck. You are cultivating atmosphere. You are creating the mental and spiritual ecosystem where blessing can land, grow, and manifest. Remember this truth: your words are architects. Let them build something worthy of your destiny. When we talk about inviting God into your desires, many people misunderstand what that truly means. They assume it is a grand, formal act reserved for desperate moments or major life decisions. But spiritually, the invitation of God is not about size, it is about sincerity. It is about the posture of the heart. It is about acknowledging that even the smallest decisions carry weight when the presence of God is welcomed into them. And this is something people often overlook. Divine partnership is not activated by crisis. It is activated by consciousness. It begins the moment you say, "God, even here, even now, I want you involved." Most people live in a fragmented way. Faith in one corner, desire in another. and everyday decisions existing somewhere in the middle, untouched by prayer, untouched by intention, untouched by divine awareness. But the spiritual life is not meant to be divided. What you call small may be the very place God wants to reveal himself. What you consider random may actually be the doorway through which God wants to guide you. When you invite God in, you stop separating the sacred from the ordinary. Everything becomes sacred because everything becomes an opportunity to walk in alignment. Dr. Cho often taught that prayer is not about informing God, it is about involving Him. When you speak those 4 words before making a decision, even a small one like buying a lottery ticket, you are not telling God something He doesn't know. You are positioning your heart in a place of humility and acknowledgement. You are saying, I don't want to move in my own strength alone. I want to move with you, guided by your wisdom, protected by your grace. That shift, that openness transforms the spiritual climate of your actions. You must understand that desire without surrender leads to anxiety. But desire with surrender leads to peace. When you chase an outcome purely through your own reasoning, you carry the full weight of uncertainty. But when you invite God into that same desire, something remarkable happens. You release the burden. You release the pressure. You understand that outcomes do not depend solely on your efforts, but on divine orchestration. And this release is not passive, it is empowering. It frees you to act boldly, knowing that your steps are being guided rather than guessed spiritually. This invitation is also a declaration of identity. When you involve God, you are saying, I am not merely a product of chance. I am not at the mercy of fate. I am connected to a divine source that leads, directs, and protects. That awareness shifts your psychology. It elevates your emotional state. It clarifies your intuition. It awakens the quiet inner voice that often gets drowned out by noise and fear. When you invite God in, you begin to discern. You notice what you previously ignored. You feel nudges you once dismissed. You see signs you once overlooked. This is not superstition, it is spiritual sensitivity. It is alignment. It is the awareness that you are not navigating life alone. When God is invited, guidance becomes clearer. Timing becomes more precise, and even setbacks carry meaning because you trust that something greater is being woven into the fabric of your journey. And here is the deeper philosophical truth. Invitation creates transformation. Whatever you invite into your life grows. If you invite fear, fear multiplies. If you invite doubt, doubt expands. But if you invite God, His peace, His wisdom, His favor, then those qualities begin to shape your decisions, your behavior, your expectations, and ultimately your outcomes. The 4 words you speak before any action are symbolic. They declare that you are not functioning on instinct alone, you are functioning through partnership. So when you pause and consciously say, God, step into this moment, you turn an ordinary choice into a spiritually aligned act. You move from self-reliance to divine reliance. You move from chance to purpose, and purpose will always lead you further than luck ever could. Invite God into your desires, and you'll discover that what you seek is already seeking you. Expectation is one of the most underestimated forces in the human spirit. People talk about faith, they talk about hope, they talk about desire, but expectation is the bridge between all 3. It is the inner stance that determines whether your heart is open or closed, receptive or resistant, aligned or conflicted. When you expect nothing, even blessings struggle to reach you. But when you expect with a sincere and steady heart, you create a spiritual and psychological opening through which the goodness of God can flow more freely. Many individuals pray, but they pray without expectation. They speak words, but their hearts remain guarded. They declare faith, but internally they doubt their own prayer. And here lies the hidden conflict. You cannot receive what you inwardly resist. You cannot attract what you inwardly fear. The mind cannot hold expectation and doubt at the same time. One will always override the other. So the question is not whether you pray. The question is whether your inner posture matches the words leaving your mouth. This is why the 4 words you speak before any action matter. They are not a ritual, they are a reset. They shift you from fear into anticipation, from uncertainty into readiness. They create a moment of alignment where your desires, your belief, and your intention move together instead of pulling against each other. When you speak with expectation, you lift your spirit into a higher emotional and spiritual frequency. You position yourself where divine energy can touch you more easily. Dr. Cho often emphasized the power of what he called incubated faith. the faith that grows inside the heart when the mind, the belief, and the expectation work together. Expectation is the warmth that allows faith to incubate. It is the internal climate where dreams stop being distant and start becoming possible. Without expectation, faith freezes. But with expectation, faith becomes alive, energetic, and ready to manifest. Psychologically, expectation shapes perception. When you expect something good, your mind becomes alert to opportunities that align with that good. You notice details that others miss. You take steps that others hesitate to take. Expectation sharpens the senses, heightens intuition, and gives birth to confidence. It changes your internal narrative from, I hope something happens, to I believe something is already in motion. That subtle shift creates a profound transformation in the way you think and act. Spiritually, expectation is an act of agreement with God's nature. You are declaring that God is not distant, not passive, not withholding. You are affirming that He is active, generous, and attentive to your needs. This agreement releases a sense of inner peace. You no longer cling tightly to outcomes. You no longer force life to bend to your will. Instead, you live in a state of readiness, trusting that God's timing is always a step ahead of your understanding. Expectation also dismantles fear. Fear thrives in uncertainty, but expectation creates certainty. Not certainty about the outcome, but certainty about God's involvement. When you know God is involved, you don't live anxiously, you live responsively. You live with a calm heart and a steady mind. And this stability becomes a magnet for breakthrough. The 4 words you speak before taking action reinforce this stability. They tune your spirit to the frequency of possibility. They quiet the noise of doubt and awaken the voice of faith. They remind you that you are not acting alone. You are acting with God's guidance. And when you act from expectation rather than desperation, your entire experience changes. You stop reaching blindly. You begin moving purposefully. You stop wishing. You start believing. Expectation is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is the recognition that the God who created the universe is still capable of creating new possibilities in your life. Live with expectation, and you will find that blessings arrive where hearts are prepared to receive them. When we speak about divine timing, we are not referring to fate or coincidence or a mysterious force that moves without purpose. Divine timing is the rhythm of God's wisdom intersecting with the readiness of your heart. It is the moment when what you desire aligns with what you have become. Many people want blessings, but they are not yet shaped to carry those blessings. Others are ready internally, but the external conditions have not yet matured. So what we call delay is often not delay at all. It is alignment. It is the process through which God brings the inner world and the outer world into harmony. You must understand that breakthrough is never random. Even moments that seem spontaneous are often the culmination of seasons of preparation. And this is where most people struggle. They assume that because something did not happen when they expected, it means it will never happen. But spiritual timing does not operate on human impatience. God's timing is rooted in precision. It moves with intention. There is no wasted motion in the way He orchestrates our lives. Every closed door has context. Every open door has purpose. Every pause has instruction. People often pray for outcomes but forget to prepare for timing. They ask for increase but resist the development necessary to sustain it. They want the blessing but not the shaping. Yet, divine timing requires both your desire and your development. When I say alignment is necessary, this is what I mean. The heart must be strengthened before the blessing arrives. The character must mature before the opportunity unfolds. The spirit must grow before the miracle manifests. Otherwise, the blessing becomes a burden. This is why the 4 words you speak before taking any step, big or small, matter so deeply. They do not force timing, they align you with it. They shift your consciousness from rushing to readiness. When you declare those words, you are not trying to manipulate outcomes. You are preparing your spirit to move in sync with God's timing. You are declaring, I trust the pace of God in my life. And that trust becomes a spiritual anchor that stabilizes the soul. Even when circumstances are uncertain, psychologically, alignment is essential for clarity. When the inner world feels scattered, timing cannot be recognized. Opportunities appear, but fear overshadows them. Doors open, but doubt prevents you from stepping through. Alignment brings coherence. It brings emotional stability and mental focus. It allows you to sense with quiet discernment when the moment is right. People who live out of alignment misinterpret God's timing because they cannot distinguish between impulse and instruction. But those who align their hearts through faith, expectation, and surrender develop a spiritual sensitivity that recognizes divine opportunity when it arrives. Spiritually, alignment brings peace. When you know your life is guided, you do not panic over delays. You do not force what is not ready. You do not beg for what God has not yet released. You understand that preparation is not punishment. It is protection. It is God shaping you into someone who can carry the weight of the blessing without collapsing under it. And when you move in that awareness, timing becomes a partnership rather than a frustration. When divine timing and human alignment meet, the breakthrough feels natural, even though it is supernatural. Things fall into place effortlessly. People appear at the perfect moment. A path opens where there was previously no path. What once felt impossible suddenly becomes accessible. This is the power of synchronization between the human heart and divine rhythm. So when you speak those 4 words, you are placing yourself in the flow of God's timing. You are saying, I am ready when you are ready. I trust the moment you reveal. I trust the moment you open. And that trust removes the weight of anxiety, replacing it with the calm assurance that what belongs to you cannot be rushed and cannot be stolen. Align your heart with God's timing, and every blessing will arrive exactly when you are prepared to carry it. When we talk about these 4 words not being magical but transformational, we are entering the deepest layer of spiritual understanding. People often search for formulas, phrases to recite, rituals to perform, steps to follow, as if spiritual power can be reduced to mechanics. But God does not respond to formulas, He responds to faith. He responds to sincerity. He responds to a heart that seeks alignment rather than shortcuts. These 4 words are not incantations, they are catalysts. They awaken something inside you that has been dormant, something powerful, something capable of completely altering the way you think, perceive, and act. Human beings are shaped more by internal atmosphere than external conditions. You can place 2 people in the same situation and observe vastly different outcomes, not because of the environment, but because of the internal framework each person brings. The 4 words function as a doorway, an internal shift, moving you from confusion to clarity, from anxiety to trust, from aimless desire to purposeful alignment. They don't change the world outside of you, they change the world inside of you. And once the inner world is transformed, the outer world begins responding differently. Dr. Cho often taught that transformation begins in the imagination, then moves to confession, and finally becomes reality. The 4 words you speak before taking action activate that sequence. They strengthen your imagination by grounding it in divine possibility. They deepen your confession by aligning it with sincerity rather than fear. And they prepare your spirit for the reality that may unfold. This kind of transformation cannot happen through mechanical repetition. It happens through conscious engagement. It happens when your heart participates fully in the moment. Psychologically, the 4-word declaration creates coherence within the self. Many people live in constant inner conflict. One part of them hopes, another part doubts, another part fears, and another part hesitates. They move forward and backward at the same time. But when you speak those words with intentionality, the parts of you begin to align. Doubt quiets down. Fear loses its edge. Clarity rises. You feel grounded. This inner cohesion allows you to act with presence and conviction rather than fragmentation. Spiritually, those 4 words are an act of surrender. Not surrender in the sense of giving up, but surrender in the sense of opening up. You are declaring that you are not depending on randomness or luck. You are not placing your life in the hands of chance. You are choosing to stand under the covering of divine wisdom. That surrender awakens humility. And humility is one of the most powerful spiritual postures a human being can hold. It opens the heart to guidance, to peace, to instruction. It prepares you to receive without desperation and to wait without anxiety. These 4 words create a sense of spiritual awareness. Suddenly, you become more conscious of God's presence, more attentive to subtle guidance, more aware of your own intentions. You stop moving mindlessly. You begin moving mindfully. And when a person lives with that kind of mindfulness, rooted in faith, anchored in expectation, open to guidance, their life begins to attract alignment. What others call coincidence, you begin to experience as confirmation. What others call chance, you begin to recognize as divine orchestration. This is why the 4 words are transformational. They shift your entire mode of being. They elevate your consciousness. They refine your internal dialogue. They purify your intention. They bring your spirit into a posture where blessing can land, where peace can flourish, where decisions carry clarity, and where outcomes unfold with meaning rather than randomness. And perhaps the most important truth is this: when you speak those 4 words sincerely, you are reshaping your identity. You are becoming someone who does not wander through life hoping for luck, but someone who walks with purpose, confidence, and spiritual awareness. You become someone who is not controlled by circumstances, but someone who moves in partnership with divine wisdom. Speak with faith, act with alignment, and watch how your life transforms in ways luck could never produce.